Welcome to Property Quorum. Well, here we are once again, the stalwarts of the Property Quorum gang. Are we a gang? Yes, we are now. No weird initiation ceremonies, please. As usual, we have Hamish McClay of Search Convey, Chris Gilson of the Root Home, of course, Juliet Babulwell of Gunnercook, and Wendy Gibson of the First Time Buyers Club, our special guest today. As ever on Property Quorum, we talk about the topics of the day so that you're better informed and perhaps vaguely amused. And today is no exception. We're talking about what is a Section 106 anyway, because I haven't got a clue. Hamish, as per usual, would you take us away?
Well, we can endeavour to. We had some nice tranquil music to get us moving, and unfortunately there's not enough tranquil music with some of these Section 106s, which are holding up developments all over the country. There is a major reason for this, but when we actually look at the situation as it stands, I don't know what size each of these developments are. However, 700 of them, that equates to about between two and three for each of the councils throughout the UK. That's quite a significant number of houses that are going to be held up, and it's not exactly going to help us move forward and thrust forward to meet the ever increasing demands of what was 1.5 million over 5 years is now something like sort of I don't know quite what we're down to, but we're certainly not on target anyway. But this is another lot which are holding things up. But there's a fair number of reasons for it. Some of them will be legal. The majority of them are, of course, financial, and it is not helping a large number of people actually to get onto the housing ladder or extend where they wanted to live. Because obviously, if there's anything that's going to be doing any sort of creating any blockages, something like development's not taking place. We know how long it takes to get them moving anyway. Section 106 is holding them up for even longer. It really is quite disturbing, I think, for the whole of the sector, the whole of the property sector.
Well, welcome, Juliet. Now, Section 106 bad. What exactly is it?
Section 106 is an agreement between the local authority and the developer, whereby a developer has applied for planning and the developer has to make certain development contributions. So we're looking at things like affordable housing, green spaces, right, educational contributions, transport infrastructure, that kind of thing. Because often, especially on the bigger type developments, you've got certain things that need to be promised and put in place. So often you'll have a planning permission, and then that planning is granted subject to a Section 106. So subject to all of the fine-tuning of the things I've just mentioned. So this is the developer's promise, so to speak, or the developer's contract to a local authority. And while I agree that, there are delays, I think that there's too much of a blame game culture here, and we haven't dissected it in the way that it needs to be dissected. I've seen developers get a Section 106, just say that they'll agree to stuff, because they're trying to fast track the planning and they know that the stuff they've agreed to is not deliverable. And so then it's stuck in the system when it comes to signing off and getting people to move into the houses. So, whose fault is it? I've got developers who they on a phased planning, they then decide they're going to split up the development with other developers, so they'll sell on a piece of land, but then ultimately the Section 106 has been signed by the original developer, so the obligation to pay the Section 106, the payments under the Section 106 remain with the original developer, because there was never any contemplation of having split up the different phases. So I think when you look at the delay in terms of getting people in houses, it's not just as a result of Section 106 payments not being made, etc. I think there's a whole, there's an issue in terms of a lack of planning, so to speak, when the Section 106 is actually discussed. Some of the delays come from the fact that if you've got a lender, that lender has to sign the Section 106 as well. So sometimes it gets to someone's desk they don't really know, they haven't been informed, etc. So there's a delay because you have a lack of communication. So there's a whole host of things that results in, the sort of inability for people to move into the houses. And it's not just as a result of missing the payments on the Section 106.
Good morning, Chris. I trust you're well. Now, it seems to me that on the one hand, Section 106 comes from a good place. It's a good idea, that the developer should put his hand in his pocket and contribute something towards the local economy or what have you. But on the other hand, it seems to be like so much glue and gunking up the works and stopping easy movement. Have I got it wrong?
Well, it's one point of view, Gareth. I don't necessarily share it. My colleagues and peers often refer to the Section 106 as the council bribe. What we mean by that is that the council really has you over the barrel in terms of authorising planning or not, based on the conditions that they're going to impose on that site,
right?
Based on what they want to happen. Coming out of the developer's pocket. Now, it could be argued that it's the council's responsibility to provide the infrastructure and services for the local community, and they should maybe be doing that out of their own pockets and own revenue. They are, after all, a revenue-making service. So it's an interesting one in terms of who should be paying for these services. Ultimately, the developer, it's a profit-making. Quite often, it's a profit-making organisation, unless it's a government body or a local or a housing association that's bringing those houses to market. And I think it would be interesting to see the Section 106 requirements placed on housing associations and government bodies building houses compared to local developers. But I guess that's a different rabbit hole to go down. Ultimately, the developer needs to be making a 20 to 25% margin on the build. And if they can't do that because of Section 106 reduces that margin to, say, 5%, the scheme is no longer commercially viable. You don't have that margin, that buffer, to make sure that if things go wrong, as they will, that the development is protected and that people still have their jobs at the end of the development. So there is a fine line of making sure that the project is still commercially viable. And I'm sorry to say, but the bureaucrats do not have a commercial mindset when it comes to these types of commercial projects. So they don't care whether it hits that 20%, 25% margin for that developer. If it doesn't work for them, oh dear, the development won't happen. But then they don't understand the knock-on impact of that development not happening in that houses don't come to market. So, which is probably why we now have this conundrum of all these different sites that are stuck in all sorts of different challenges and not coming to market. Now, the stuff that Juliet's talking about with developers playing the game, to some extent, they've been around for a while, so they know what they're doing to an extent, and they are trying to get stuff shoehorned and active. But yeah, I'd say they're perhaps operating in some more grey areas, some of those examples. But yeah, ultimately, if more people don't do that, I mean, the world operates in grey areas in many circumstances, and bringing things to getting things moving is really the biggest priority, and the thing that people really care about. And it's harder. It's much easier to start to position things. For example, it's the moving car analogy. Once the car's moving, it's easier to steer the car. So it's easier to start to position things once it's in motion.
All right. So, are we saying that the governmental bodies or the local council see them as filthy capitalists who are just trying to make an extra buck, and shouldn't be bothered by putting their hands in their pockets and politically greasing their palms, and on the other side that because of this everything gets locked up because it needs a certain level of profit just to have a point to it. Is that what you're saying, really? I
think that there's so much waste in government agencies and bureaucracy, and since they are revenue making, since they are ultimately accountable to the taxpayer, we need that level of accountability and transparency in what they're doing and where these funds are going. And I think part of the problem, part of the reason they wield weapons like the CIL, the Construction Industry Levy, the Section 106 agreements against developments, is because they have no money, because they're so bad at spending money and accounting for money. So you and me will go and buy a biro for 10 pence. They will spend 20 quid on it. It's that level of difference in thinking, and that accountability has just gone out the window, which is a real shame.
Good morning, Wendy. Lovely to see you again. So apparently, it's all the fault of the capitalists.
I disagree. I think there are various people at fault here, and I don't think it's possible to actually specifically point blame at one particular part.
Oh, go on.
Now, obviously, I've got a vested interest in Section 106s because I advise first-time buyers who are looking to buy shared ownership homes, which may fall under Section 106. And my very first flat that I bought was actually a shared ownership home. So I've got a first-hand experience of what it's like owning and living in one of these. But in a previous role, I've also helped finance a number of developments where there have been Section 106 requirements. And we've seen this I've seen this firsthand, where many councils, they clearly hold developers over a barrel about withholding planning permission or making planning permission subject to Section 106 agreements. And then the demands placed within the Section 106 agreement are wholly unreasonable. So there was one example that I can remember around Reading. I won't say it was in Reading, but around the Reading area, where a developer was looking to build a number of homes. And because of the Section 106 affordable housing requirement, it meant that they were required to allocate 12 homes in this particular scheme to affordable housing. Now, they shopped around for ages, and I mean months and months and months, trying to find a housing association willing to actually buy 12 units in one piddly little scheme. For them, the economies of scale just don't exist in buying small piecemeal Section 106 affordable homes dotted around all over the place. So a lot of these housing associations are looking, if they are looking to buy, they're looking to buy chunky pieces of affordable housing because it benefits them financially. They benefit from economies of scale. And I've seen firsthand that there's often never any sort of plan B built into the Section 106 agreements, like what happens if the developer is unable to sell off or at least attract a housing association to buy the designated affordable homes. And this is where a lot of schemes end up getting stuck because they are required to provide that affordable housing. They've done everything that they can to attract housing associations to buy that affordable housing off them, and they're unsuccessful. And then the scheme stalls because the council doesn't offer them an alternative solution.
Julia, it just appears to me that this is all a bit daft. On the one side, you've got the developers who just want to get the stuff up because they know that there is how should I put this, a definite requirement for new homes. Goodness gracious, we need them. And on the other hand, the council are throwing what appears to be jacks and pins and everything in their path to stop them making it happen. It's nothing.
Yeah. I think Chris hit the nail on the head where he spoke about the priority. What's the priority here? Are we looking to get these houses, built and occupied? And there must be, as Wendy suggested, alternatives, because the building process it takes a long time. So what you've started off with may not be what you've ended up with. And so it's quite punitive if you're saying to a developer, listen, developer, you've got to do this, this, and this. And this point about, and I drum on this all the time, the lack of accountability, where you're saying the council is realizing all of these funds from an affordable housing from a Section 106, where is that money going? Because surely that should go back into the community, to help the people. So somewhere along the line, the objective is missed. And I think that it becomes a game where, as a developer, I know I need the planning, so I say what I need to say to get that thing done. But there is a lack of communication here. And when you've lost sight of what the purpose is, what the priority is, you have this sort of nonsense happening. And the knock-on effect is ultimately to hurt the economy. So it doesn't help anyone. So there needs to be a true communication between the developer and the local authority. And it can't just be that this is what we start off with and we're going to stay in this, the Section 106 is not subject to change. If you need to make alterations to allow the development to happen, then to me, it's a no-brainer. You've got to make those alterations, because what you're going to have is you're going to have a lot of unoccupied properties, which ultimately will cost us, the taxpayer. So it's about communication. It's about looking at the priority, getting people in houses, getting those houses signed off, and ultimately, I think being less punitive. It's not that, the developer's a capitalist, the developer's making money, we're just going to take that, because then you're going to have people losing the incentive to want to build properties.
Right. Chris, are developers being held to ransom?
Yeah, arguably, yes.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that. It's been long. No, it just seems to me that maybe I've got my old silly 1960s flower power hat on, but which is a different one to this one, obviously. Shouldn't they just get down and talk and come to a sensible agreement? It just appears that perhaps the councils just don't realise the machinations of a capitalist society.
I think that's quite adept. I think that the councils do really need to recognise that if they're engaging with profit-making organisations, they need to make margin, and it just seems that's gone out of the window. The alternative, obviously, is if they want to bring these sites forward and develop them themselves, just have a conversation with central government about how they're going to coordinate the funding and what they're going to do with the stock afterwards. That's also a good avenue. It's not possibly on the cards based on what the current track record is, but it's still a good avenue.
Wendy, is it just about lack of communication, or is there something else I'm missing?
I think it is more than just a lack of communication. I think there's an awful lot of bombast and ego involved as well, where there's an assumption by certain parties that they are in the right and everyone's supposed to jump around and, according to their requirements, rather than actually trying to look at things in a more holistic fashion and being pragmatic about the requirements and if there are any alternatives. So many schemes have been stalled because of the fact that not only have there been difficulties in trying to get social housing or housing associations to buy up these small piecemeal allocated affordable units, but even the cost of doing the viability schemes, and Chris probably knows this better than me, to try and actually prove to the councils that the scheme is unviable at the level of demand that the council is making under Section 106. Those are not cheap reports to produce, and the delays as well in actually getting homes built. There's so much prevaricating that goes on behind the scenes. It's no wonder that there's so many schemes that have been stalled, and quite often the Section 106 affordable homes can't even be started being built until such time as they have a guaranteed purchaser of, this is the developers, they have a guaranteed buyer of those affordable homes, because each and every social housing or housing association has their own specifications. So they can't build speculatively, hoping that they can buy or sell the completed units off to a housing association, because they'll want to chop and change all sorts of things within the specification. So it means that they just don't get built at all.
Zara Olibukas, a friend of the show, has put a comment. They should be held to ransom for building duff properties. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, me and Zara have spoken about this before. I absolutely agree with her. There's absolutely no reason to be building substandard properties, and yeah, both developers and their insurers should be held accountable for that. I agree.
Julia?
Yeah, absolutely. I think accountability has always been the nature of the beast, and I still maintain that, look, we shouldn't be punished. If you're a forward-thinking society and you're building homes, etc., then there needs to be that open line of communication, the ability to change as you go along.
Wendy, would you a final comment?
The final comment is, I just wish everyone would get along and communicate with each other.
It's not just me that's a hippie then. Okay,
inside and actually get homes built.
Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well, I think everybody's put me to right. There's me thinking, well, this is quite simple. And there's nothing in life that's simple, is there? Just an interesting comparison, and Juliet will know about this because she's involved in part of it. We were involved with, as bearing in mind what we do, we gather information from the local councils. There was a development in Reading, and what they were actually sort of doing on top of a multi-storey car park, they were putting 112 flats up. And we needed to go and get the information on these 112 flats. It was for social housing. We spoke to the land charges officer, great guy he was. He'll retire by now, will he? And I said, right, what's it going to cost me to get the information for these 112 flats, Hamish? And he said, they're all going to be the same, Hamish, so I'll just charge you for one, and that'll do. And just recently, we've got a block of flats. There's 15 flats with Bedford. So they've turned around and said, well, what we'll have to do, we'll have to charge you £27 for each of the additional ones. So it's the traditional cost with one and £27 for the other. And you actually sort of think 112 flats cost. Now, why should there be this difference? And this was sort of inferred, I think possibly Juliet sort of inferred this, but are these funds that are being paid, whether it be the land charges, whether it be for Section 106s, are they actually going back into the benefit of the community, or are the council using them to pay for other things, which, because we well know that whether it happens to be local government or main government, are they using their funds effectively? And I think we can just look at the cost of what it took to get all these people over to India, so our Prime Minister could sort of hide. Is that to the benefit of everybody that's paying for it, mainly the taxpayers? So the councils will make up the rules. We want it all to work. We want the social housing. It's a matter of communication, but it's so much a matter of attitude. We do need to get this accountability right. And therefore, if we've got the accountability right and everybody's working in the same direction, we won't have the challenges. The councils vary, the developers vary. It's human beings, isn't it, we're speaking about here? And they're all going to react in different ways. What a shame we can't actually just work more closely with each other.
I say replace the councils with AI. No, I didn't say that. Of course not. Thank you once again, Hamish McClay of Search and Convey, put this thing together in the first place. Of course, Chris Goldston of Brood Home, Juliet Babulo of Gamma Cook, and our special guest, Wendy Gibson. And to all of you out there, don't despair. There'll be more again next week. I'm in Property Quorum, of course. Until next week, please keep your head in the clouds. No, feet on the ground, reaching for the stars. And please try and look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.